Okay, so this is the NMR software called Delta, and here we've got a spectrum of propylene glycol, which I'll just show you here. So this is propylene glycol, 2 carbons, 1 carbon here, and some hydrogens, and 2 OHs each end. And this is the proton NMR spectrum. And so these are the methyl groups down this end. We should have an integration of 3. We'll tidy that up shortly. And you've got the other hydrogens down here. So one thing you might want to do to start with is to zoom in. So you want to zoom into these peaks here. So what you've got up here on the first left is there's a zoom. You can click on the magnifying glass and zoom into those peaks with the left mouse button. Zoom into there, and obviously that's zoomed in. And you can press home. If you press home, it takes you out of the zoom, so it takes you back to there again.
Bigger box?
Yeah, you can draw a bigger box like that to get the integrations in. And if you press end, it will make the largest peak almost at the top of the intensity. So that peak here will go to about 99%, I think it is, up to the top. So it just kind of enlarges it in the y-axis, which you might find useful. Okay, then you might want to go home again to take you back to the initial screen. Let's have a look at the integrations. So at the moment they're given these numbers. I think that they've got this M on. I'm not quite sure why that is, but they are relatively, I think if you were to look at the, I think relatively they're correct. But if you want to set one to 1, say, then you can do that by, so at the moment we've got the magnifying glass icon. If I set that to just the arrow, the select, 4th one in, and if we click on one of them, so say we want to set this one to number 1, we click on that, let's click on the writing there, and then go on the arrow or K, it's the same icon there, and then drag down to normalize, and then that goes to 1. So you might want to do that. And so that's now 1, that's 1.52. But because we know this is a methyl, this should have an integration of 3, so we can see there's something we could probably do with the integrations down this end. So let's also we can see that these 2 peaks in the middle here have both been integrated together at 0.88. So if we wanted to separate the integration there, what we can do is zoom in. Let's zoom in again to that area. And if we get the select tool, click on 0.88 and just press delete. See, they're both integrated together at the moment. Press delete, and then if you use this integration, well, there's 3 different types of integration here. See, there's this grey integration there, and then there's 2 integrations on the top menu at the top. So if we click on the blue one, you can see that does both together. I think what happens is it takes the integration where the baseline goes back down to 0. See the middle area here, that hasn't gone down to 0. So it automatically, the algorithm must automatically take that into account, what we don't want it to do. So what we can do is, again, select it, press delete, and this grey integration here gives you some flexibility on where you want to draw that integration. So we can kind of start on the bottom left, drag it across until we're kind of halfway between the 2 peaks, so you get 0.29, you can just let go of the mouse there, and then we can draw another one for this peak. So if you kind of select halfway between the 2 peaks again, oops, alright, drags that one. Don't want to do that. I think if you just select and then click somewhere else, then just repeat it. So then zoom, integrate the one there, then just go at the bottom between two peaks and then just drag until you're way past the peak. It's got a bit of background there, and where you kind of take it off, I suppose, is a bit of interpretation there, but if I just go to there, then that will be pretty good. Then again, if you click on select, that kind of takes that off there. Then you can zoom out by going home, and you can see they're both integrated now. You might want to base the integration rather than on this one being 1, maybe one of these ones you've just found, because it's 0.3 and 0.24, and these other ones are about twice that value. It might be these have an integration of 1, and then the 0.6 ones have an integration of 2, and then maybe this one will come out as 3. So let's choose one of these. So say the 0.24. So we select it and then go to K and then down to normalize. Now we got 1, 1.25, 2.75, a bit higher than 2, and that's certainly higher than 3. Let's see what happens if I base it on the 1.25. Click on that one and then click on the K down to 1. So down to normalize, and that's a bit closer to 1, 2, 3, something like that. So that will do for the time being. What other things can we do? Peak select. Yeah, if let's zoom in to a peak, say this one down here. Zoom. Get this one here, and see at the bottom it's picked up some of the chemical shift values, but not all of them. So let's see how we can label this up properly. So if we select a threshold, so if you look at the top here, yeah, that one there, see if I just hover above that one there, the 7th icon, adjust the peak noise baseline. So if I kind of click on that, and that will give me a threshold of where to intersect the peak. And then if I click on this 9th icon, which looks like a kind of diamond type icon, if I click on that, and if I click in anywhere on the peak where it bisects this line, so maybe here, it finds the maximum. If I just click it, it will find the maximum between where it cuts the line going up and then cuts the line going down. It will find that maximum peak. So even if I don't click on exactly the right area of the, corresponding to the height of the peak, it will find it for me. So if I kind of move around like this, see, whatever happens, it's finding the maximum 3.81. And then same for this one here. So I don't think it's labeled, it's hard to see. I think maybe it is that 3.394. Yeah, click on it, see, and it's blue 3.94. This one has 2 little peaks here. Both have been captured, and I think it actually does capture both of those. So you think it would only find the highest, but it does actually find both of them. So that's okay. It's found those already, and it's found those 2, and it's found this one, but it hasn't found the ones on the bottom. So if I click on this one, it will come up with some error message because the threshold isn't at the right position. So what I need to do is lower that threshold. So if I click on, go back to that threshold one, that 7th one in, lower that so it's bisecting some peaks. That might do it. And then go back to the diamond icon and then click on some of these peaks. So if I click on different areas within that, you it gets the peak probably, and then those two, and then that one. So all those peaks are now labelled. So we've got the chemical shift for all of them.
I believe if you zoom in further, so you've got the green threshold line. I think if you zoom in further, you get a grey line, which is for noise, which you can also adjust.
Oh, okay.
So you see at the bottom we've got the black baseline. I think
Yeah.
just above that there's a light grey one.
Oh
And
yes.
I think
Yeah.
if you zoom in further,
Zoom in further. So
you
let's
can
get the
adjust that for noise.
zoom. Can we do that?
So yeah, you have to go in
Right.
very far.
Right. So
Just
zoom in just
on
down
the
there.
Yeah,
Down there, sort of thing.
yeah. Just get the edge. And now if you go to threshold, there will be it's the 7th button.
Oh yeah. Some. Yeah.
It gives you that, so you've got the black line and the line slightly above that, that's for noise.
Oh okay.
So you can, if you want, adjust that line as well.
Oh, okay. That sounds useful.
You might not want to.
Yeah. Okay. So we get out by going home, and that takes us right back out. So we label all these peaks now. You can do the same for everything else if you want. So we can do integration, we can zoom in, we can label chemical shifts. Overlay might be something else you might want to do. So in this example, I've got, so this one was propylene glycol, sometimes called monopropylene glycol. Let's see what the, if you want to overlay it, say with the spectrum of dipropylene glycol, so it's the same molecule, but rather than the OH, you've got a ether group and it links to another propylene glycol. And it does get a bit complicated because the position, the methyl groups, you can have like a head to head or head to tail conformation. So the molecule actually might look a bit complicated rather than this simplified version here. But let's have a look anyway at the principle of overlaying. So let's reduce that down. So we can overlay in two ways. We can have one spectrum above another by using this open icon, this open data. So if I click on that, and then I can find the spectrum for dipropylene glycol. So it's DPG proton. There it is. So one just hovers above the other. And I mean, if you want to export these files, probably the most convenient way actually is using screen dump. So just print screen, and then that's one way of getting the data off. Before you do that, you might want to zoom in, probably on a level where the peaks are above each other quite nicely. So you can use zoom. Let's zoom, say, from 5 to 0. So 5, if I sort of go just now down by the bottom of the baseline on 5. Yep, just missed it. 5 up to 0. And then 5. Doesn't have to be 5, it's just a convenient point here. 5 to 0. Then the peaks overlap. Well, they don't overlap, but they overlay to some extent. So that might be good enough for what you want to do. Of course, you can do everything we've said about labeling peaks and doing integrations, etc., on this lower peak, which is the DPG spectrum. So MPG and DPG. Yeah, if you want to remove that and go back to where we were, then we can. How do we do that? No.
So we never press the trash can, the bin button, unless you want to start again, because it will just delete everything that's on your screen, and unfortunately there is not an undo button. So try to avoid pressing that.
Don't press that.
It's either the negative next to that.
Negative? That one?
There.
Oh yes, that negative frame. That got rid of the overlay there. Okay. So back to whichever the first one was we put on. The other type of overlay is probably what you would be thinking when we say overlay is to actually put the spectra on top of each other. So this is MPG, and now we go to the, not the open one there, but the green plus next to it. So click on that, get DPG, and you can see they've overlaid like this. The first spectrum always appears green, and this second one appears as this gold coloured one. And I would suggest just use these colours, and if you want to change the colours later, do it in, say, Paint, Windows Paint or something like that.
You've got at the top left of the screen the two tabs.
Oh yeah.
So you've got on the left is your first initial, and on the right is the spectra that you've added.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You want to flick between the two.
So there might be some way of, well, you can flick between those two. You do integrations, etc. Even so on these.
Stay on this one and then hold the Alt key.
Hold the Alt key. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe I've got to come off the magnifying glass. Maybe.
Yeah, you need the hand.
Yeah. Oh, the hand. Yeah, go for the hand one. Yeah. The second icon.
And then hold the Alt.
Hold
key.
Alt.
You should be able to drag.
And then you can push. Oh yeah, push up. So you can push that spectra. All I'm doing now is holding Alt. I'm pushing up with the left mouse button. And in that bottom left box, there's a delta X, so I can get it exactly where above it should be overlaying in X, where there should be no chemical shift. So delta X is 0, that there. So at least I've only Y shifted it, I haven't X shifted it. There might be a reason for X shifting, but in this case I just want to hover above. Maybe I don't want to do it so high, I can just kind of bring it down a bit. To something like that. That's quite nice. Might want to do that. I mean, you can shift it in Y as well. You can just sort of move them both off. Here I'm just using the left mouse button without any Alt. I'm just left mouse moving it.
And if you do that holding Shift down.
Shift and move. Now I'm only moving it in Y. Yes, it doesn't want me to. It locks the ability to pan the spectrum. Probably less useful, that one, but so this is just move with the hand, just moving with the left mouse button. You can move X and Y with Alt. It only moves whichever one's selected up here, so the second one relative to the first one, and with Shift it's only moving in Y. It's not shifting the, sorry, it's moving in X and not shifting the Y. Have a play. I think you soon get to grips with it. So what I'll do is I'll just use Alt to just line these up so there's no chemical shift in Y between the two.
Which is seen in the bottom left corner.
Yeah, bottom left there. Oops, not quite 0. Yeah, it's a bit tricky to do actually. I won't worry too much, but something like that. Anything else? I think that's everything you probably might want to do. As we say, probably the best way of getting the data off is to do some alt print screen to do a screen dump to get it off, and you can change colors and things in Microsoft Paint. That's probably the best thing to use. Okay, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.